And if I'm still breathing, there's still work to be done. Jeff, the breakthrough in my life came when that verse became personal decades ago. And I came to realize that the ultimate metric for my life was to complete the work that God gave me to do. Vision is a malleable term. My vision was not for the ultimate outcomes. The next step took us to the next and the next and the next. And
Well, Bob, we're almost at 30 years of the master's program. It was 30 years ago that the master's program was conceived, but really it was actually conceived some years before that. You'd had a vision. Could you tell a little bit of that story and background? Because I think a lot of people don't know what led to you deciding to want to do this.
my career path did not begin in the nonprofit sector. It began in a privately held family business that I married into. I came up through the ranks in that 200 employee operation and ultimately succeeded my father-in-law in leading that company. But while I was doing the for-profit work out the front door, I was working in the lives of business leaders out the back door, helping guys and gals who had come to a understanding of their faith position to consider how that modified and positively affected the way they went about their business lives. Long before Henry Kashner was doing faith driven, we were doing faith driven. And I was doing teaching in the marketplace as a avocation alongside my vocation to help folks figure that out. That wasn't a theme that they found covered in their local church life, but it was the focus of what we were going to be doing in the work that I found more and more preoccupying my time. So I, over the course of a decade or more, found myself in private consults with folks who knew that there was something missing, though they were hitting it out of the park in terms of their career lives. But there was an unsatisfied appetite that they had for making impact that had less to do with their business metrics and more to do with what they embraced regarding faith. And so that was the real genesis for me of finding that there was a need for understanding of biblical truth that included but went beyond the standard fare of the Sunday morning spiritual cafeteria that they were used to in their church life.
Hmm. So, with that as a backdrop, what led to you believing that people could really want this or discover it? Because without others in the space, you were first in the space. How did you help them to understand that this is what was going to happen? It wasn't exactly a Bible study, although it was rooted in biblical ideas. How did you convince people to come along with you in that process?
Well, getting into that subject, I was doing this teaching stuff on a weekly basis and in a growing footprint of exposure to folks geographically and in terms of industry. And ultimately, my life became a message alongside the messaging that I was doing from the platform. And that message was, how in the world did you get into this lane
Uh-huh.
from the role that you were playing in this mechanical contracting company that was dominant and succeeding, but was inadequate in terms of an ultimate answer to the question, what was I here for and what would I want to be remembered for? And so the message of my life became kind of a growing subject that called for response. And I found myself over the course of years sending folks away from coffee dates or lunch appointments with frameworks of process scratched onto the back of placemats. And I watched them fold those and put them inside of a breast pocket and carry them away. And ultimately, I found that people would come to the table with saying, I've got a unique situation. And then I found that over and over and over again, those unique situations were recurring with people who thought they were one offs. But in fact, I was discovering that their sense of hunger and need for something that they weren't getting anywhere else could be something that we could offer, not in a auditorium with 1,000 people, but in a room with 15 or 20, that we could engage conversations that they were not invited into anywhere else. And then I found a partner in Bob Buford, and we were both exhibiting the same kind of bifurcation between our for profit lives and our kingdom impact life lane. And we partnered on some things that began the conversation that we had together and then beyond. Ultimately, it led to Bob getting a book out. Halftime became his signature piece, now over 1 million of those in print. And pretty quickly, we realized that there was going to be an opportunity to frame the challenge of his vision in a strategy that would allow people not just to applaud what he was doing or what I was doing, but in fact, find the thing that God made them to do and become just as confident and competent in that as they had about their career lives.
Mm. So we're talking about Priority Living's the master's program, Bob. You founded Priority Living and you authored the master's program. And as you built that, you've seen people launch from success to significance to find that they were made for more. So for you, what are some of your favorite stories of people that have launched into different lives that they never expected and have served Christ as a result of the time in the master's program?
I have two daughters. Through them, we have four biological grandchildren, two adopted grandchildren, now one by marriage. And so you bait me with the question of favorites. I have seven grandchildren, Gen 3s, and there is no answer to the favorite question. The favorite is the one that's in front of me right now. I've got, as you know, thousands of men and women who have come through the pipeline of the master's program. And to ask me which of them is my favorite, I would answer the last one I talked to is the story that comes to mind immediately. But those are recurring. We've had hundreds of people who were couldn't find the time to read a book who have now written books, and they blame us or credit us with having lit the spark that became a published work. We've got men and women who have begun ministries that did not exist before their vision to see a solution for a problem that had grabbed their heart and wouldn't let them go. And they've created ministries now that have become either a primary focus or a companion element in their lives that allow their for profit life to be pouring resources and momentum into startup initiatives that are doing things that don't make money but make impact. So, I hesitate to give an answer. I just got off an email exchange with a good friend who was senior partner in a law firm that had a very unique niche in the Inland Empire of California, Southern California. But today, he and his wife are living in the Coachella Valley, Palm Desert, Palm Springs area, and unexpectedly, he retired out of his law practice, but now they own four or five boutique restaurants that are together under a common ownership. It's a for profit entity, but they've got over 300 employees, and most of those are under 30. And most of them are in need of something more than just a paycheck from the hospitality industry. And they've started a church that meets in their home on Sundays. Mark is the functioning as the teaching pastor in that setting where dozens of people are coming on a weekly basis, most of them from their restaurant staffs, and these are folks that they're impacting deeply. Their lives are all over the map in terms of their backgrounds because younger generation just don't have the founding that church folks do. But Mark would tell you today that while his practice was an energizing support for the life that he and Liz have today, that he's now found his voice and is doing things in what most would view as his retirement years that is far more meaningful in his view than what he was doing with the prior years of his life.
Well, Bob, what you taught me is that my mindset is going to allow for things to be possible. And frankly, when you challenged me and us in the room, I remember where I was at the Barnabas group, and you were challenging all of us to imagine that we were actually could live for more. That it was enough of a, I'd like to find that you're wrong and then be right at the beginning, only to find out that you were right and I was wrong. And so much of the rest of my life has been, what could God do through me if I would just make myself available to the thought of what could be. So we could get rid of the favorite term, but I just know that there's stories like where your adopted grandson came from and that amazing ministry that I know that you and Sherry are passionate about, and some of the fuel that the master's program has had on Acres of Love, to stories of people that have completely metamorphed from who they were to who God made them to be. And I love these stories because it's all improbable except it's real, except it's all happened. So what other stories pop to the top of your mind? Maybe one or two more that you could share that would just help, because conceiving the possibility comes with first having a hero that lived that life, and you have been and are my hero. But having that posed in front of somebody makes it possible. So tell me a story or two more of people that have changed as a result of the master's program.
The the title entrepreneur is not found in the New Testament document, but it's because the word didn't exist until a couple hundred years ago when the notion of a different breed of cat who operate with a why not and what if mindset came on scene. All entrepreneurs are leaders, but not all leaders are entrepreneurs.
Mm.
But the entrepreneurs are people who arrive on scene and are looking for ways to either disrupt or create. And most folks are not wired that way. They want to find a position that can be sort of clarified and codified, and they want to step into something that is low risk, high confidence, and that's great. And the opportunity for volunteer positions like that are on the table at church or in the parachurch world. Entrepreneurs have a hard time with that, and we've focused primarily on entrepreneurs. You mentioned Acres of Love founders Ryan and Gerda Autognati, South Africans who moved in the late 90s from Johannesburg to Southern California because of some family issues that drew them here. As they vacated their home, their family home in Johannesburg, they chose to repurpose that asset as a safe house for AIDS orphans, and they found that it was so effective that even though they were no longer there, they had hired house parents who shared their faith to become functioning as parents with kids that had no connection other than opportunity, be drawn as a compassionate, faith driven solution, one home size to begin. They had bought a second home next to that and had a third in the pipeline when they came across the master's program, joined us. Both Ryan and Herda came through the master's program in the early 2000s through a story that I don't have the time to recount, but we had opportunity to be in South Africa to see their model. And my wife, Sherry, her heart went immediately to what she was seeing with these kids who had been taken literally out of the ditch of life and brought into an environment where they were cared for in a way that honored God and met their needs. And from then to now, Acres of Love, they found through the master's program that the ability to see this role and this solution as scalable and replicable, and they began a serious move forward. And though Ryan has continued to have a for-profit life that has functioned alongside that, they will be remembered 1,000 years from now for the impact that they've had on hundreds of little boys and girls that would have been left in the ditch of culture without the solution that the Acres of Love model has provided for them. Now, over 40 homes between Johannesburg and Cape Town, hundreds of children in their care, and a mobilization that has included lots of folks through the master's program and the Barnabas Group connections that have become partners with them in buying more homes and inviting more kids in. And it's that kind of innovation that comes into an entrepreneurial leader's mind that they can't shake. And so, we've just watched the emergence of solutions that are the natural byproduct of entrepreneurs encountering problems that they will not tolerate as unresolvable.
Mm. Well, Bob, I know that I said, and man, I can say hundreds of people that I have met have said, I wish I would have done the master's program when I was much younger. I would have avoided so many troubles and I would have been living on a purpose much earlier than I did. And so recently, we've decided to start to work to scale the master's program with something called TMPx. And our idea has been that we're going to host existing alumni and people who are in the master's program now to start to be trained on how they can use the video based series of the master's program called Life Launch to be able to scale this out. So, imagining that we start to do this here, which we are November 7th and 8th, and we're inviting more and more people to do it. Did you ever imagine 10, 15 years ago or more that this thing would go that far? Or how big was your vision, back 10, 15 years ago? And what do you think about where it's going today?
Vision is a malleable term. It's stuck on a lot of things these days, but I'll just say it this way. My vision was for the next step. My vision was not for the ultimate outcomes. The next step took us to the next and the next and the next. And what's happening with the TMPx and the Life Launch series is something akin, in my view, to recognizing that the gold standard in the graduate education for business world, a Harvard MBA, opens doors for a lot of people because they now have the gold standard of business education. But they still do, Harvard Business School still does short week long or weekend long seminars or institutes that take some of the Harvard MBA product and makes it available on a broader basis for people that don't have 2 years and $200,000 to invest.
Yeah.
And so, the master's program is still the gold standard, and 3 years under a coach who can really be a transformative influence for people who break through in ways. And we've got hundreds of graduates among our thousands who would use the term that it's a uh, virtual executive MBA in kingdom leadership about the master's program. But there's an opportunity to do what Harvard has done and to make essential parts of the master's program content available to people who would like to get it in a more compressed or more accessible manner. And so the life launch process is being offered, and it is being led by facilitators who have in common a personal experience through the 3-year process. So without the executive MBA and King of Leadership, they would not be as prepared or as energized about offering it in a more accessible way to folks that they can now multiply themselves into.
Yeah. Well, you know how I feel about it. It's something that I'm excited about because I believe that one of the greatest gifts that really you ever gave me, Bob, was allowing me to coach the master's program. And by allowing me to do that, I still maintain that I've been the greatest benefactor of my coaching, which, could be arguable or something the Lord will decide later. But for now, I feel like I have benefited the most from the fact that I've been able to prepare and lead and get deep in my relationship with the Lord and my vision for what He could do. And so the benefit of this is not just an output to others, but really the benefit of being able to lead has been immense to my family, immense to my career, and ultimately immense to my relationship with the Lord. Uh, so, Bob, when you think about leaders and the times that we're living in, I'm also really compelled by just the days that we're in. Now, it's been bouncing around in our circle. The book, The King is Coming, the Bevere book that we've talked about and read, but a lot of his statements, which are great, aren't new statements, but it is bringing back to the forefront a the urgency of remembering that Jesus is coming back, and the time frame for that I think like this, and I'm really interested in your opinion. Here's where it bounced around in my head. Two things. One, in the 80s, I saw a lot of what I would call perhaps irresponsible date setting, which led to some choices of I'm not going to pay my bills because Jesus will be back by a certain date. One thing, and the second thing that bounced around in my head was that Heather and I got to be around Pastor Chuck Smith because we were doing worship at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, for their marriage group for a number of years. And so, sort of the common theme in that day was that as Chuck got older, all he preached from was Ezekiel. And so there was a sort of like the older you get, the more you talk about Jesus coming back. And so I largely in my mind, 10, 15 years ago had sort of sidelined that as to it's going to happen someday. I don't know when, and I'll just leave it in the background of my mind rather than making it a vital part of my spiritual life. But not just through Brevere's book, but through your teaching me and through other books that I've read, and just realizing how much the whole story has always been about God with us, about God making a place for us and to be living with His people. That's really the whole point of the story, and so I've come back to it as not a sideshow or even a background thought, but as a vital thought of what needs to be informing my everyday. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you're passionate about this, and you spend a lot of time thinking about people groups and that. Why is it so critical for us to be making it a part of our mindset on a daily basis?
A lot of people who are not healthy seek out a nutritional um, measure of their makeup and discover that they're deficient in some critical factors that once reloaded into their biology can change their daily health experience. I've just found that there are a lot of contemporary Christians in the American church who have deficiency in a couple of things that we emphasize and spotlight in the master's program curriculum. One of those is the fact that an understanding of eschatology. Now, that sounds like something that your insurance plan covers and that will violate your personhood. But eschatology is the study of future things. And a third of the Bible was prophetic at the time of its writing. Much of it has come to pass. There is still a significant body of the Old and New Testament writing that has yet to occur on the timeline of history. But I believe that a reasonable reading of the scriptures argues for the fact that there is an urgency with regard to the return of Jesus that does not put us in a mode where we echo the skeptics who Peter quotes in his epistles, who say, things are just going on like they've always gone on. There's nothing extraordinary about this moment in history. Just settle down. God will come along 1,000 years from now. You don't have to do anything differently. I believe that there's an urgency to the revelation of God's plan for time and history. And in my world, that means urgency with regard to whatever I need to get done. Now's the time to do it. The second thing is to ask the question, why does it matter? There's a widespread belief on the part of Christians who have not studied the subject that somehow eternity is a broad plane of everybody's the same, there's no difference, we're all in charge. Well, the truth is, as we know from our community and workplace lives, if everybody's in charge, nobody's in charge. God has the ultimate hierarchy functioning in the eternal realm, and we're graduating into an eternal environment where someone is going to be above everyone, and you're going to work your way up ultimately to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Under him, 24 elders. Many would argue that 12 of those from the 12 tribes of Israel, 12 from the 12 apostles. Beneath them, um, is it all flatline? What we've found in scripture is that the promise of promotion and um compensation for life lived in this mortal world where we're not yet in view of the eternal realities. The life lived in faith today, serving a kingdom that we cannot yet see, and believing that there will be a recompense in a place we do not yet occupy, with currency that does not yet populate our accounts. It does matter what I do here, and it will matter to me for eternity. And it is urgent for me to get serious about that, because whether interrupted by the return of Jesus or interrupted by my departure to be with him, I don't have forever to get my work done. And what the scripture says um, is that the work that we do today, my life verse, if I was pressed to have a favorite life verse, it would be John 17:4, where the Lord Jesus on his way to Gethsemane prays, I brought you glory on earth by completing the work you gave me to do. That's someone who's ready to end this life and head into eternity. Someone who can say, I've completed the work that you've given me to do. And that brings glory to God. Jeff, the breakthrough in my life came when that verse became personal decades ago. And I came to realize that the ultimate metric for my life was to complete the work that God gave me to do. And if I'm still breathing, there's still work to be done.
Bob, I'm curious, as you look at the world, how are you analyzing things in terms of the way that things are coming together, prophecy perhaps being met or in process of being met? What are some of the things that you're seeing that might lead one to say, "Look, the time is getting near." Certainly I can make the very generic but sure comment that every breath that passes is another, moment closer to Jesus's return. But I'm just asking for when you're looking at the world and you're seeing what's happening, What are some of the prophetic things that are starting to lead you to feel the moment nearing?
I believe that the work we were left to accomplish is captured in what we call the Great Commission. Those words are not found in the inspired text, but they are the headline that is placed over this notion that the gospel of the kingdom is uh, our product, if you will, put it in marketplace terms. The world is our market, and we were told on Jesus' exit to go and make disciples of every people group, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that He had commanded them, that He would go with them to the end of the age. There is an end to this age, and that end will come when the work that He commissioned His apostles and beyond them, every generation who have taken the baton and carried it forward, when we finish the Great Commission, He promised that this age would end with the kingdom age that will follow. And I believe that we're now in a generation that has been able to clarify and quantify the people groups that we were assigned to go to, carrying the product of the gospel of Jesus. And the penetration of those people groups was the assignment that we were left with. And without getting into a laborious explanation under the footnote here, but we are in a place where within the next few years, and I'm talking single digit years, the expectation that the last of the people groups will be penetrated with the gospel. And what Jesus promised in Matthew 24:14, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached as a witness to every people group, and then the end will come. So he didn't put that in terms of a year on our calendar, but he put it in terms of an accomplishment metric followed by the trigger of a prophetic fulfillment. The gospel of the kingdom will be preached as a witness to every people group. That's an assignment with a metric that we can measure and see where we stand. Then the end will come. And when he talks about an end, he's not talking about the end of, that it's not the ultimate blow up of everything. It's the end of this age and the beginning of the visible becoming the reality that Jesus will return. He will sit on a throne. He will administer his righteous reign over the whole earth. I believe that each of us was made by God to have a longing for Eden, a restoration of our personhood alongside other people and in relationship with our Creator God, with whom we have active fellowship and conversation. We have we have mist of that today. We'll have the reality of that one day. And I believe that it could occur in the remainder of my lifetime. And clearly, I'm in the midst of the fourth quarter of my life. So I have less horizon of years than you do. But I can tell you that I believe that it's possible in my remaining lifetime to see God declare that the Great Commission's assignment has been completed as he left it to be served. And he could return in my lifetime to deliver on all of the promises and prophecies that he's left for us to know and from which we can be stimulated to action.
Yeah. Well, I think that that stimulated action is really the additive part of really making this a part of my daily thinking. In other words, I read over the weekend, and I like this thought is that the health of your spiritual life with God is directly related to after thinking about Him, does it lead you to want to share Him? And the more that I think about His return, I think about how much He loves me, and I realize what He's done for me. It does lead me to want to tell somebody about it. And I think that that's the other part of what excites me about TMPx and Life Launch is that we're working a muscle to invite people and to invite them into a closer relationship with God, and to work the invitation process to say, and do you even know my God? And can I tell you more about Jesus? And so getting this back into the mode of operation, I think is something it's a muscle that's atrophied in at least the U.S. church, if not the whole Western church, of not thinking that the goal is just to go to church, but rather to be the church and then to invite people to know Jesus and live that great commission. And again, I think that this idea that Jesus is returning is a it's a spurring, it's a pushing of there's no time to waste, but to continue to share that news.
Jeff, a lot of people believe that the way to go about this is to lead with your mouth. And if they are not comfortable raising the subject, they just decide that they're not part of the Great Commission. The model of Jesus was to lead with his hands and his feet and his ears. He came to listen, to serve, to solve, and then he spoke. And if we'll lead with our willingness to meet needs, solve problems, establish presence, listen to what people are saying and where they really are, and then speak, our message will be welcomed in a way that it would not otherwise be welcomed.
Mm. Bob, thank you for giving us a picture of the past and what some of your early vision was and what that led to, and then also talking about what excites you about today and our hope for Jesus to come. Pray many more years of your ministry and our opportunity to collaborate. It's a huge blessing to all of us.
It's my honor. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for spending some time with us here on Leveraging Success with Jeff Gerhardt, brought to you by Priority Living's The Masters Program. If today's conversation stirred something in you, share it with a leader who needs it. And follow the show so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep leveraging your success for what matters forever.